Hi, I'm Johnny from UltimatePaperMache.com, and this is the second video in a series that I'm making. In the last video, I showed you how I made this reusable mold making material that you make yourself out of unflavored gelatin and some glycerin. Now, the last time you saw this, it was really watery because it was still warm. I had just made it. Now it's been out for a while. It will actually solidify at room temperature. You can see, I mean, it's just a piece of rubber basically in there. And I'm going to warm this up in order to make a mold. Now, I've actually made 3 attempts to get this to work. The first time I tried using it the same way that I do the Rebound 25 silicone mold material that I get from Smooth On. I love that stuff, and you just brush it on. So I was hoping that would work with this too, so I could make less of this stuff instead of having to actually pour it on and completely fill up a container. It doesn't work. It really doesn't work. Don't try it. Now, there are other recipes for this material that use more ingredients that you might be able to use as a brush-on mold. But this recipe that I showed you in the last video, no, it does not work. Now, the one thing that I did find out did work in that particular experiment was that you can use WED clay under this mold material if you seal it. And I sealed it with the turtle wax and Vaseline, just like I showed you in another video a couple of weeks ago. Just because it might be a little bit easier, I tried using the mold material over unsealed WED clay. It didn't work. At all, because the gelatin and glycerin material bonded so tightly to the clay, I could not get it off at all. I just never could pull them apart. The next thing I did is I went out to my clay bucket and I pulled something out that I had been playing with before and then decided I didn't like it and I threw it back in the bucket. The face was made out of Sargent's plastilina. The one thing that I was a little bit worried about this was that the plastilina has a really low melting point. So since I do have to warm up the gelatin mixture in the microwave in order to get it to go back into its watery state, I was afraid that it might actually melt the plastilina. Fortunately, that didn't happen. I put some Vaseline over the plastilinas to make sure that it was sealed and that the gelatin stuff would come off. I didn't want any more of those disasters. Then I got a box and put some aluminum foil in it. You do need a waterproof container because we're going to be pouring this material in it, and it really is as thin as water. If you have any holes, it's going to end up on the floor. I put my quart jar of gelatin stuff. We really have to think up a better name for it, by the way. Calling it reusable mold making material, that's too long, and the gelatin, I don't know. So if you have any ideas for a name for this stuff, I didn't invent it, but I think we could go ahead and invent a new name. It's got to have something better than that. But anyway, I stuck it in the microwave for 4 minutes. That's how long it takes for this to melt in my microwave when it's been previously kept in a refrigerator. So it started out cold, 4 minutes, warmed it up enough so that it was completely melted. I poured my first quart into the container. You want to pour around the edge and just let it find its own level. Don't like try pouring it on top and letting it flow down. Let it move up, if that makes any sense. That way you get a lot fewer air bubbles. Since the first quart was not enough to completely cover his nose, I went and got my second quart out of the refrigerator, put it in the microwave for 4 minutes, and poured it on top as well. Now, once that's done, all you have to do is be patient enough to leave it until it's completely solidified. It will solidify in room temperature. So once that was done, it comes off beautifully. Just, it did not stick to the aluminum foil. I didn't use any release on the aluminum foil at all, and it just pops right off. I did have to wiggle it a little bit to get it off of those nostrils because there was such a deep undercut, but it didn't break, it didn't tear. Did very, very nicely. So then I went and got some warm water and some plaster cloth and filled this mold with the plaster cloth. I didn't want to get carried away and put a whole lot of plaster in there, but I did want to make sure that we had something that we could pull out and actually prove that this mold making material really does work. When I was putting the plaster cloth in there, the water kind of pooled in the bottom of his nose, and I was a little bit concerned about that. I was afraid that maybe that would interfere in some way with the gelatin, or maybe it would soften it in some way, but it just turned into hard plaster like plaster always does, and didn't seem to have any effect at all. Except for the fact that you can see the fabric pattern on the plaster cloth. It is actually a perfect match with the face that I started out with. Now, the one thing that we don't know at this point is how many copies of something we would be able to pull out of the same mold. But it looks to me like you're probably going to get at least 4 or 5, and maybe even more before it starts to get a little bit too soft or start to break. So if you play with this stuff in any way and come up with some really cool use for it, please let us know. And come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.